My name is Annabelle. I was born in Indio, California, and I was raised all over California, and I would say my late teenage years up here.
Well, tell me about your home life, what you remember of it, and were you raised with your mom and dad?
I was raised with both my parents until I was 12, and then it was just my mom.
And growing up, what was it like for you?
It was horrible. I hated my childhood because I always felt a lot of depression. I mean, I was suicidal when I was a kid. Yeah, the feelings of hopelessness and not wanting to be here. I was very anxious, like panic, anxious. But I had like nobody to help me. Like I tried to tell my mom about it, and pretty much her response was, "What do you have to be upset about?" So I kind of shut down, from telling her about the way I felt. But I blocked out a lot of my childhood, but the things I do remember are my mom abusing my dad, screaming at him, yelling at him because he was an alcoholic, and eventually he snapped, and he almost beat her to death in front of me when I was 12. This is when those cell phones first came out, and they were like chunky and big, right? And he grabbed it and he started whacking her in the side of the head, and he didn't stop. And there was blood all over the wall, and she was dizzy, and she slid and fell down against it, and it went by in slow motion. And the creepiest part about that was it was at my dad's mom's house, my grandma. And while that was happening, she held the home phone in her hand so I couldn't call the cops. And she goes, "Kill that fucking bitch, we'll kill her." My own grandmother, yeah. It was super traumatic. I felt like it was a cult, creepy, like cult vibes. But her and my grandpa were just standing there watching it. And then my aunt and my uncle on my dad's side just acted like nothing happened.
So nobody stepped in?
No.
No. Your mom? No one shielded you?
No. My dad snapped, that happened, and my mom had come in the house. This started outside. He started strangling her outside. Her neck was all red. She ran in the house crying, yelling for me, "Sky, Sky." I went by my middle name. And I was just like, what, and they started to get into it, and I remember instinctively getting in between them. Like I knew maybe I could do something. That was just what I wanted to do, was like stop all of it. But I remember my mom pushed me out of the way. That was probably her instincts. And right after she did that, my dad snapped and almost beat her to death. She almost died from that. Anyway, an ambulance ended up coming, and that was the first time I remember ever crying out to God. I was 12 years old, and I just remember all the desert sand, and I fell down to my knees, and I was crying, and I was like, if there's a God, please, I don't want to lose my mom. Yeah. So I remember that, and she was in the hospital bed, and there was blood all over the place, and they had to stitch her back up. She's got this scar right by her temple. He was like a centimeter off from cracking her right in the temple. So that was a really traumatic thing that I remember from my childhood. And I think that was one of the earliest traumatic memories that I have, and that I carried with me for a long time.
Yeah, that's something that, like you said, has stuck with you. Mm-hmm. But you said from then, at 12, is that when your parents separated? Was that the last kind of straw?
Yeah, I didn't see my dad again after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I ended up seeing him later when I was an adult, but I didn't see him again.
So you and your mom?
Yeah, and that was when I was 12, and we moved. We stayed around like the Desert Hot Springs area. From what I've heard from my mom is he was supposed to do time over that. He ended up fleeing the state and he moved to Texas not long after that. And I think it was to avoid having to do time, because he almost beat her to death. I don't know what it was, the charges, but that's what I remember my mom telling me.
And so, Desert Hot Springs, you said Palm Springs, 29 Palms.
Oh yeah, so we've lived all throughout those areas, from when I was like, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We moved all over the desert, Palm Springs, Cat City, Cathedral City, mainly Desert Hot Springs. And then when I was 16, we ended up coming up here to Seattle. And I just wanted out. I wanted out of California. I was sick of being in the desert, and it just meant a lot of misery to me. It was just, I viewed that area where I was from as just pain and misery, and I wanted out. And, I'm glad for some reason I picked Seattle.
Well, why did you pick Seattle? That's the question.
Honestly, mainly it was because of the rain.
Just complete different.
I love the rain, and we never got rain out there. And I always wanted to experience snow. It ain't gonna snow out there, Another thing was, I really loved Kurt Cobain as a kid, and I knew he was from Seattle, so that also, yeah.
That's a big draw, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The music scene.
I was like obsessed with Kurt Cobain when I was a kid.
During this time, you're going to school and everything?
Yeah, I did good in school until I was in like 8th grade, so I was like 13, and I started failing because I'd get obsessed over these boys that just didn't want me back. It was always like this unrequited love, It wasn't really love, but I thought it was. But it was like, these were the symptoms of like borderline personality disorder that I noticed. I didn't know about it then, but I had these like strange obsessions over, I started liking boys and they never liked me back, and I really felt rejected. I felt really rejected and hurt because, I look around and there's other kids that are linked up that like each other, and how come I can't have that? So then I started to think I was unlovable and I was unwanted. And then there was also, the trauma from my household. I grew up seeing my definition of love was not love. Your parents are your first definition of love, supposed to be. Well, my mom and dad hated each other and they always fought, and my dad almost killed my mom. So to me, that was my role modeling of relationships. So I didn't realize that until recently, actually, but.
Yeah. When we start working on ourselves, you start to unravel and peel back that onion.
Yeah.
And go. But but when you're a kid, you're just a kid.
Yeah,
you don't know. That's all you know.
Yeah.
Right? So you're just going through life and doing what you do.
Yeah.
You're not aware. So you're 16.
Yeah,
your mom
come up here. Yeah, I went into school, West Seattle High. I made friends. I made some friends. I was like the only virgin. It was creepy, but unless kids were lying to look cool or something. And I was younger than everyone too, because I was born in September, so I was like turning 17 when everyone was already turning 17, turning 18. So I was always kind of younger than the people in my grade. So I went to West Seattle High for, I think, 10th or 11th grade. And I ended up failing because I was obsessed with this Russian guy. He looked like Kurt Cobain. And I just couldn't stop thinking about him. Like, I would literally get fixated, and that's all I could think about. And it's like I didn't even care about school, And I would skip class, and I was cutting myself. I think that was like, I was just trying to find another way to deal with the pain.
To cope, right?
Yeah. I remember I was cutting myself, and those were like the first signs, like something's really wrong, And I remember my mom tried to get me like mental help, but I remember I had a bad reaction to the Prozac. It made me suicidal. I had to quit. Buspar didn't do nothing. It was just, it wasn't working out. And that's also a weird age when you're like still young. Your brain's still developing,
Rapidly.
Yeah. So that was just not working out. And I ended up meeting a friend through a friend. And I got kind of close to this guy because he was kind of like a source of comfort for me, because after I was obsessed with the Russian guy, I knew that was never going to happen and got heartbroken by it again for the gazillionth time. I liked this other Japanese guy, right, named Kenji, and I was obsessed with him. Well, he like toyed with my feelings a lot, and it's like he kind of liked me, but he didn't want to be with me because his friend liked me. And you can't get in between guys and their friends, you know?
It sounds like kind of typical 16, 17-year-old.
Drama, right? Yeah. Stupid. But it means everything when you're in it,
Yeah. It's
the
world, for sure.
And so, so this guy comes along, and he's one of their friends too, and he was just real comforting. Like, he'd listen to me and talk to me, and he was friends with them too. But, come to find out, he was a really controlling, jealous, possessive psychopath, But, these narcissists put those masks on, and they hide all that from you. But anyway, I got close to him, and I remember my friend Micah warning me. He goes, Alex wants to get you drunk and rape you. He told me that. And I'm like, what? And I thought he was just exaggerating because I knew Micah liked me too. And Alex was like, oh, he's just saying that because he wants to get down your pants. He doesn't want you hanging out with me, And I was like, and I was really like stupid and naive when I was younger. I was really naive.
Well, yes.
But my friend...
And very vulnerable.
Yeah, very, very. So my friend warned me. He said that. He was straight up about it, and I didn't know what to believe, right? Well, I go over to his house one night, and he had a whole bottle of Jaeger that he got from his older brother. And that was the first time I ever had hard alcohol. And I loved it because it made me feel like everything, all my problems were gone, But I drank too much, like I've always done, and I blacked out. And I came to, and I just remember him pulling my skirt off. And I started like panicking, but I was like really like out of it still. And I remember like him like opening my legs up. I remember this. And then I remember like me freaking out, and I'm like, no, help. Because his dad lived downstairs, right? He had the top part and his dad was downstairs. And then I remember him grabbing a pillow and putting it over my face so I couldn't yell anymore. And I blacked back out. And I wasn't sure if that was a dream or not when I woke up in the morning, but I felt really violated. I felt really disgusting, and just I didn't feel right. My mom, it was weird, she had a feeling something bad happened. She drove over there to pick me up, and she asked me, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm fine. I just acted like nothing happened, right? Because I wasn't even sure if I was dreaming that or not. Well, I went in the bathroom and I put a mirror in between my legs to check. And then I just kind of felt in shock, because I was a very innocent girl. Like, I was literally saving myself for the one, I've always been very about marriage and all that. And that really broke me, because at that point I just felt like, what's the point? Like I got something taken from me that I felt like was one of the only things I had left, So I hated myself for it, for not listening to my friend. I hated myself for being around this guy. And then I continued to hate myself because I stayed around him. And our friend circle didn't really believe me, because I've always stuck to my story that he raped me.
You did tell people.
Yeah, it wasn't consensual. Yeah, it was not consensual. I've always, and I'll die saying that, because I know what happened. And they're like, well, why are you with him then? You know, they couldn't wrap their heads around why I continue to hang out with him. And it makes sense. I didn't even know why. And come to find out, I didn't know this until like 7 years ago. It's called trauma bonding. You can trauma bond with your rapist. And I did. I know it's not like super popular, but when your rapist is like one of your only close friends, you know,
Very confusing.
it totally can happen, yeah. It's kind of like, I always described it as like Stockholm syndrome. It's very similar, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Like,
it really messed me up.
It's brutal.
I was strung out on heroin just a few months after that.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So my
process.
mom ended up going back to California.
Okay.
I didn't want to go with her. I was officially an adult now.
18?
Yeah. So she couldn't.
Legally.
Legally, she couldn't make me leave.
I don't know officially. I guess legally.
Oh yeah, right. Legally.
Legally.
I became an adult pretty quick when I got in those streets, though.
Well, so when she left.
So when she left, I was Alex was letting me stay with him. He was sneaking me in his room and stuff, and I don't know if that was because of guilt. I mean, he's cried about the whole rape thing, saying he didn't mean to and all that. I don't know. But there was also a blue van that was parked behind their house. This was all in West Seattle. I used to stay, so when his dad was finally like, because I don't know how many times his dad kicked me out of his son's room when he was like, I know she's in there. And we went through that for like a month. Then I started to just stay in the van behind the house. I did that for a few weeks at the most. And then eventually his dad just moved the van, so I couldn't stay there no more. And then Alex was pretty much like, I don't know what to tell you. I did everything I could, like and then he just started treating me like crap, and I was just like, I don't have anybody. Like, I don't know what to do. And I finally, and I mean, I was meditating on this, for a while at this point where I'm like, why don't I just do drugs? Like, why don't I just find some like real drugs, like heroin or something, so I don't have to feel all this bullshit? Because I'm tired of it. I'm going to kill myself if I got to live like this, That's how I felt. And so one day I just ended up taking the bus to downtown from West Seattle. I still remember it clear as day. I went downtown. I remember the first person I met, her name was Darcy. She was like this old native woman. And I asked her where I could get some heroin.
And you never done hard drugs?
Nope.
Just barely drank?
Yeah. It was pretty crazy how it happened. And it was funny because a lot of them were like, who's this chick? They thought I was an undercover and stuff when I first,
I mean, I hear the desperation to numb and cope the immense trauma and suffering.
Yeah.
And in your teenage brain, you're like,
yeah,
this is my choice. This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that was like that was like the only option I felt I had. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have no money. I didn't have a job. I didn't have support.
Yeah, you're not thinking, I'm gonna go get some therapy.
Right.
And like work this stuff out.
No.
You're like, here's a solution.
I wanted something now.
Yeah, right.
That too, I knew therapy would take forever, and then I didn't even know how to go about that then, My mommy sheltered me, like she was doing everything for me. My mom didn't even show me how to drive, dude. I learned how to drive through a drug addict that helped. You know what I mean? Like, I learned stuff through other drug addicts, like, or on my own. It's just crazy. But, so I asked her where I could get heroin, and she was like, really like, who are you?
Suspicious.
Yeah. And I knew that was going to happen. I was kind of scared. Like, are these people going to steal my money, jack me? Like, you never know what could happen, Well, she actually, she's like, how much do you want? And I'm like, I don't know, like 20, I didn't know nothing about, I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it was like. I didn't know any of that. Well, she ended up getting me a gram. I didn't know how to cook it up or anything. She had to do it for me. And it was crazy because I was terrified of the needle. I was so scared. I didn't want to die, but I felt like I wanted to die. So she actually ended up showing me how to do this stuff. And I remember one of the first places I did it at, because I didn't want to do the vein thing. And what's funny is, like, to this day, I don't know how to hit my veins. I've always muscled it and stuff. But a big popular spot is to go in your butt, because there's a lot of little veins, I guess, in your butt. And you just boop and give it like 10 minutes at the most, and you're in a different world. And it burned like hell. It hurt.
The sting of the needle.
It's like a sting.
Like a shot, right?
Yeah, but it could be worse because you don't know what they're putting in there, you know, like.
So you don't even know, like,
what they're cutting it with.
I have to take this person's word for it that this is heroin.
Yeah.
And
I remember she did ask me, she's like, what's your habit like? And I was like, what does that mean, you know? And what she meant was, like, how much do you do a day? And I told her I've never done it before, and she was like, ooh, I'll really have to water it down then. Crazy, huh? So, and, you know, she probably ripped me off, but I didn't know what I was doing. But, you know.
Again, the desperation.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even care. I just wanted, I was thankful she was even helping me, you know, because she didn't even have to, but she was desperate, I'm sure, you know?
Right. On both people, that's right.
You know, especially when you got a new person that don't know anything, you know, people jump on that in this world, you know?
Yeah. Take
totally.
advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, if you're open to talking about it, you know, what was that like first time?
It was.
What did you feel?
I don't know about my first time, but I remember one of my first times really experiencing the heroin high, and it's like all the pain went away. It's like, it's as if all those memories you had are gone. And as if, like, all that emotional trauma and pain just got a fuzzy, nice, warm, soft blanket thrown over it. And you're okay. Actually, you're great. You're great for some reason, and you're warm, and you just, it's literally like terrifying how good you feel on heroin. That's why it's so addictive, and so many of us have been trapped in that, because once you experience that high, it's hard to live life without it, really, when you know that you could just be feeling that instead. Like, it's so you know, that's what I was after for many years after that time, and that was in 2008. I was 18 in 2008. So yeah, I lived my life chasing that feeling for years, because I mean, who doesn't want to live life without pain? Right?
As well as the pain, and does it take away, like, all emotional, like, even like happy feelings, like all feelings?
It can. I mean, I think it just depends on, like...
Yeah, like numb. Are you numb completely out of void of all those
You
feelings?
can be. Yeah. I think it depends on how much you do. Yeah. You can do enough to where, like, you know, you're super zonked out. That's usually when you're, like, nodding out. Or you could do just enough to where, like, yeah, you're numb and just, you know... I mean, can you feel other feelings when you're on heroin? If they're good ones. Right. It's weird. It's like a filter. You just feel good. You just, even if you think of a painful memory, which you won't think about it. Even if you do, it's like, oh, I'm okay. It's just like it's an illusion. It's an illusion, though.
Yeah, elaborate a little bit more about that.
It's an illusion because as soon as the drug wears off, you're feeling the way you felt before you used it, you know?
And then tell me about that cycle.
Oh, God. So you feel the pain again, and it's all back because the drug wore off. And then, you know, typically when you're in that cycle of heroin addiction especially, you traumatize yourself further, because you get in situations where you compromise your morals. You do things you would have never done if you were sober. You end up hanging out with people that you shouldn't be hanging out with. I mean, almost all of us were doing something criminal to maintain our habit. And it's just, you get in trouble with the law. I mean, you lose places to stay because you need your dope all the time, and it's going to become obvious eventually. You know, it's just, you can lose your children, you know. I mean, it's just, it goes on. And then next thing you know, you got more stuff that you got to use the heroin for, that the heroin caused. You know what I mean?
I don't. What do you mean?
So, like, you do the heroin to not feel the trauma in the beginning. But because of the heroin, you end up causing yourself more trauma.
Right.
Then you got to keep using the heroin to deal with the trauma that the heroin caused.
On top of the other.
And then it's just, the hole gets deeper
Yeah.
and deeper and deeper, to the point where you either live like that the rest of your life, or you actually face things and get sober and clean. That's what it comes down to.
So you lived that, you know, you were out on the street at that time.
Yeah.
And for how long were you doing that?
Oh, God. I was out in the streets from 2008 until 2001.
Yeah, it's a long time. It's over a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a long time.
Yeah.
Living in it, like tents and...
I wasn't really a tent person, but I was either mobbing around outside like this. Like, I might crash in a cubby, like in an alleyway somewhere, like that.
So not even in a tent, just
No, I would be outside, or I would be like posted up, you know. Sometimes we would know people that had a motel room and pitch in money, or like give them some dope to crash there for a night, that kind of thing. At one point, me and this guy I was real close to named Hagen, he got a van, and we lived in that van for a while, like I don't know, under a year, but that kind of stuff. I mean, that's no way to live, though. It's not.
You did it for a long time.
I know. That's why when I finally got a place to live, I was like, I don't want to leave.
Well, did anything in that 10 years or over 10 years, 12 years, stick out to you?
A lot of things. I mean, good or bad, or either.
You tell me. Let's start with the good. Good.
Good?
Yeah.
You're like, let's do good.
Let's do good.
Yeah, you know, what sticks out to me is, even though this world is ugly and cruel, like living in that lifestyle, I've met other people in their addiction that really had a heart of gold, you know? People that still had somewhat of a moral compass, even though we were out there. Like, I mean, I can't explain how much it meant to me to meet a guy out there that wasn't a creep, you know? One of them was this guy named JJ, and he just let me chill in his tent, you know? He was never a creep. He got me well before, you know, which means a lot when you're a heroin addict. And it's just those kind of things meant so much to me when I was out there, because like the majority of people are just cutthroat, out for themselves, predators. There's a lot of predators, especially if you're a young, pretty female, you know. They're like, you're treated like you're meat or something, and then they always assume if you're a female that you're a hooker, which I think is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to come in not judging or assuming anything until you talk to somebody and find out.
Totally agree.
Well, in this time, you came to the Rural Commons.
I came here for the first time in 2020, I think. Yeah.
And tell me about what did Annabelle look like at that time when she walked in the door?
So, my hair was probably down to here. It was dark red at the time. I used to dye it dark red all the time. And I was probably like 100 pounds. And so September 2020, so I know what real love feels like now. I realized most of my life I thought I was in love, but it wasn't love. It was either lust or like codependency. But I really fell in love with this guy. His name was Chris London, and he was really big in Fremont, AA. He had 25 years at one point. He was very handsome, very funny. Oh my God, he'd have the whole room laughing, and he was very intelligent, and he was very deep. He had a lot of depth, very spiritual. Well, I fell in love with him. I was with him for, I think, 2.5 years, and I ended up getting kicked out of his apartment because of my alcoholism. You know, that was another addiction I had, was alcoholism.
So you're doing heroin and alcohol?
Well, I had quit the heroin for a while, but I just switched to alcohol for some years.
Gotcha.
So it was like heroin, alcohol, and then heroin at the last. So I got kicked out of his apartment, and because I was so codependent and needy, you know, that's when I ended up messing around with and hated the way I was on alcohol. So he offered heroin, and that I was like, he didn't know I was a heroin addict, but I was like, okay, you know, and I started to smoke it. And this is like right after I got kicked out of Chris's place, and Chris was trying to be clean and sober. He was, you know, he was big about sobriety. The whole time I was with Chris, I was trying to be clean and sober, but I relapsed on alcohol here and there. So, but I was trying to be. So, anyway, I ended up pretty much sabotaging my relationship with Chris, who I really did love, because of drugs and codependency and me. I mean, I didn't know how to deal with not being around Chris all the time. I didn't know what to do. Like, I needed a man with me all the time.
Like a pain point almost, yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible. I mean, I still regret doing that. But anyway, so Chris I think he ended up moving. I do. He pretty much just disappeared. And not having answers, I just went downhill, you know. I went downhill, and because I didn't know how to live my life without him. You know, I really saw him being like the one I was going to marry. I finally found the one, and I ruined it, and I hated myself for it. So I ended up really strung out on heroin, and that's when I started coming around to the Commons, because I was going to Fremont at that time, but then we got shut down because of COVID, but they were still open with the regulation stuff. And I would come to the Commons to get help, you know, bus passes, food, coffee, run into other people, and just to talk to people.
Yeah, and elaborate a little bit about, you know, talking to people and the people here.
Yeah. So I remember I really clicked with Mary, and she actually started working like right when I got there, right around that time. And I would just talk to her a lot about everything I was going through, knowing she would listen, and that meant a lot because I didn't really have a strong support network there. And I stopped talking to my AA friends because I had all this shame around being in my addiction, you know, that's pretty common. So I would talk to the people here instead. I'd talk to her and Luke and sometimes Elizabeth, and but mainly Mary, and there she is right there. Mainly Mary, and you know, I would just vent to her. I would tell her about everything I was going through. I did that too at the Elizabeth Gregory home. I would talk to the people that worked there a lot too.
Yeah, there's something about being seen and heard that is like so vital.
Yeah.
For us as people.
Oh, it's huge.
And,
like,
yeah.
I went a lot of my life feeling unheard and unseen, and I think that's why, like, you know, just talking to the staff here meant more to me than a bus ticket, you know.
Yeah.
Seriously, it meant a lot.
Connection, that human connection.
Yeah.
A real human connection, authentic human connection.
A real one, yeah. Like, not surface level fake, you know, BS. Yeah. I remember one of the rooms was number 50 because we got moved a lot. We stayed in 50 for a while. I remember that one. That one. And then the other one was this one way in the back on the right. Because it was laid out different. It had 2 beds for some reason instead of 1. And the bathroom was bigger. And I think mainly because I was alone a lot in that one the most. By the time we were in those ones, I was getting kicked out, and then I ended up getting trespassed. Or not trespassed. I wasn't allowed back because we kept fighting. And it was in his name. So, but I ended up thankfully with my own room down there. But that one I remember crying a lot. I'd listen to music real loud because I had the Wi-Fi on my phone. I didn't have service. And I would just do drugs and be in my own world. I would just check out. To me, that was like all I wanted to do. But that's not all that happens. There's just so much chaos ensues, and you only have the room for so long, you know? You only have money for so long because you're spending it on drugs, you know? And then what do you do when the money and the drugs run out? Yeah.
Well, I'm also curious too, well, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but what like shifted in you when you're like, I'm done with this stuff. Like, I want to live differently.
Oh boy. It's going to sound crazy. So, I know there's like, I thought about this earlier. I'm like, I hope I don't have to go elaborate on that, but I'm going to sound like a tweaker or something. But so honestly, what really got me clean and sober was this weird stuff started happening to me where I was being like followed and watched by strangers. And it drove me to the point where I thought I was like maybe having meth psychosis or something. I thought I was losing it, but I wasn't. I got clean and sober because I couldn't handle doing drugs, knowing I was being followed and watched by all these random people. Like, it was freaking me out, for real. I told you it'd sound crazy. What's even crazier is I'm like, maybe if I get sober, it'll stop, you know? Like, maybe I just need to get sober to see if I'm like, make sure I don't have drug psychosis. Well, even by the time I had like a month or 2 or 3 sober, it was still happening. And I don't know if you've talked to a lot of people, but there's something called gang stalking, and it's real, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, 2 things. It's like, that's your process, which is totally fine. No judgment here.
Yeah.
Like, great. That's part of like your process. The piece about gang stalking, I'm starting to understand that there's something called block watch, where there's like the city provides like neighborhood block watch, where like neighbors watch and report, and I think possibly to people who are living in a certain lifestyle, that could be terrifying. Mm-hmm. You know, or even, you know, if I think about myself, if I was walking around and people were suspicious of me, constantly looking at me, like checking me out, I'd
creepy.
Be like, you would feel that, because you feel when people are watching you, right?
Yeah.
As obviously you did.
Yeah.
So you're like, whoa.
But that drove me into getting clean and sober, because it's not fun. Like, I'm one of those people that I like to get high in secret. I don't like people knowing I'm getting high.
Okay.
I mean, they might know I'm getting high, but I don't want them seeing it or watching it. Well, the level and extent to which this was happening, I mean, it's a thing, and it's I think similar to that, but it's way more terrifying. It's like, I don't know if it's the government or what the hell it is, but it's a thing. Like, I thought maybe people were just tweaked out and crazy when they were talking. It's real. Like, I'm like, I know it's real.
Well, so eventually
it went on
away?
for 6 months.
Oh.
6 months, yeah. But honestly, that's what got me sober.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are they doing this to people to like try to get them clean and sober or something?
Right, you start quite.
You know, I was wondering,
like,
why?
You're trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, like,
What's
why is
here?
this happening to me? Like, what did I do? Like, And that's what I'm writing that book about, is to literally go in detail about all that, because it was so crazy. Like, I mean, it's one thing for the community to like look out for their neighborhood, but it's another for like random cars to drive by and honk at you, flash their lights at you, take pictures of you. You don't even know these people.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you go. It was crazy.
Yeah, for half a year, it's a long time.
It was like a sci-fi horror movie. That's what I felt like I was in. Yeah.
Well, so when you fought to get sober, what did that look like?
It was hard.
AA sounds like a piece of it.
Yeah. So it was really hard because I was not only trying to get clean and sober, but I was getting harassed and watched and followed by all these weirdos. And on top of that, I was trying to stay away from drugs and be clean and sober. I mean, it's hard to do that on your own regular, but while you're also being harassed, followed, watched, and just tormented mentally.
And living where at this time?
Oh, so at this point, I was I had the vouchers to those hotels, motels. I was at the Shoreline Inn, and then that's where this started. And then it followed me all the way to the Red Lion Inn, and then I finally got in my apartment, and it stopped.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
And how did you get an apartment?
HEN,
Great.
Housing and Essential Needs. They got these, DSHS will give it, they used to give you these vouchers for HEN. And it's if you're on ADB, which is age, blind, and disabled. It's like the thing you get before you get SSI, which I've been trying to get SSI for years. And the thing is, there's a wait list now, because it's stupid, but I lost my HEN because I got pregnant and ended up on TANF. You can't get HEN if you're on TANF, and it's just stupid. So, but Kelly kept his, and that's how we stayed there. But yeah, I mean, now I'm on a wait list hoping to get my HEN back.
And how many years ago was this?
This was in 2001.
2001.
Mm-hmm.
And
2, 3, 4.
so, yeah, so 4 years, and then, so you said you got pregnant and
Yeah.
had a child.
Yeah. So then I ended up getting pregnant. I found out I was pregnant, I think, August 2021. Yeah. We got into the place we're living at now, November 1st, 2021. And then I had Caliber, that's his name, my son, Caliber Kane, May 16th, 2022. Yeah. And, you know, that pregnancy was rough. I was really depressed and nauseous. It was hard on me. But that's not my first rodeo, having a kid. But it's my first rodeo raising one. I'm able to raise this one. And I'm real happy about that. I really feel like God rewarded me with him, because I wanted to be a mom, you know, to my other kids. My 3 other kids got taken by CPS. And it all started with, I ended up getting extradited all the way to Bellingham on a warrant. And my daughter was like 3 days old in the NICU. Yeah, because I was on methadone. So she was weaning off methadone in the NICU, and I was getting thrown in jail, and that's how CPS came. They didn't actually come in because I was using and stuff, but I admit I was having a hard time staying sober throughout my life. I've gotten sobriety here and there, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my understanding, that's part of recovery, is the relapse. And
it can be,
It can be.
Totally.
That's a good way of putting it. It can be.
For a lot of us it is,
Yes,
yeah.
it can be.
Most of the time.
And those other kids are where?
My 2 daughters are with my mom, and then my son got adopted out. He's in Bellevue.
Yeah. Which brings up a question. Do you talk to your mom?
No. My mom doesn't want to talk to me for some reason. She screamed at me on Facebook about something, and I don't know. She just got a lot of anger in her. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Are they like legally her children?
Yeah, I think so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And your dad?
My dad is just in Texas and doesn't really talk to me either.
Yeah, gotcha.
I've tried to talk to him, but I don't think he knows how to be a father. You know, I just think I don't know. But what really comforts me with that is God is my daddy now. So I know my real daddy.
Great. And also too, from yesterday, I know you're in school.
Yeah.
And doing school. Tell me about your goals right now.
So
you're a mom, you're in housing, you're going to school.
I know a lot has changed in the last 4 years. So I didn't have so I made it to like 11th grade, I think. And I was like, I might as well get a diploma instead of a GED. I mean, I know they're the same, but a diploma sounds better to me. So they have a high school plus program at North Seattle, and I did that. I got my diploma within 3 months, September, October, November last year. And then I started school this year in January, majoring in music, minoring in art. And so I love art and music, and essentially like I want to be an art therapist and work with people like I used to be. And I also want to make music, and I don't know, I like to do a lot of different things,
Great.
So I'm like a musician and an artist, essentially.
Love it.
Musician and an art therapist, I guess. Yeah,
I know all about that. A little bit about that. Annabelle, one last question I like to ask before we wrap up. Is there anything that you would want the people of Seattle to know?
Oh man. The people of Seattle. Yeah. So most people who are homeless because of their addiction. I would say the whole time I was homeless, literally like 99.9% of us had an addiction. That's why we were homeless. And I get in the YouTube comments a lot, and I'm like, they're blaming the lack of housing. It's not the lack of housing. It's the fact that people aren't getting clean and sober. That's what it is. If we get to the root of the root to the homelessness is, I'm telling you right now, it's addiction. I know it like the back of my hand. And so if we can somehow help them want to get clean and sober, I'm telling you right now, more people would be not homeless.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said. Have them want to want.
Yeah.
How did that happen for you? I mean, you touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my guess also too is not like this one thing.
Right.
It's multiple things happening.
Yeah.
Where you're like in multiple steps.
I know. The advice I give to anybody I meet is to pray. Cry out to a power greater than yourself to want, for the willingness for sobriety, because it'll totally change your life. People would not recognize me if they saw me 4 years ago. I don't look like the same person. I'm not the same person. I'm not. I've changed a lot, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I never got clean and sober. That is a fact. I might even have been dead by now. And so, I think I know that's a big argument among people in Seattle right now. Is like they're like blaming it on the shortage of housing. I'm like, no, I'm telling you right now, it's the addiction.
Yeah,
it's the addiction.
I mean, it's definitely complicated, and there's a crisis.
Yeah.
And there's this piece of, you've heard housing first, this part first, and then you've heard wraparound. People need
Resources.
A lot of support.
Yeah.
And not just housing, but multiple things.
Yeah.
Of happening. And so, for some people, it works different for everybody. It's like in your case, it was this way, maybe, and for some people, it's like, I got stability in this house. Now I'm gonna start on this other piece, and but a lot of people are coping.
I know another thing too is like people who've gotten into housing and they just continue to use and they end up dying.
Yeah, and that
because
happens.
they're enabled because of the housing.
Yeah, and that happens too, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's
or
different.
They end up losing it because of their addiction.
Right.
So I'm just going based off like what I know from being around these kinds of people over a decade and being one myself.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you guys like what I know from having that experience, and and if there's any way I can help with any of that, like
you're helping right now.
Oh yeah. Like I guess I'm thinking like when it comes to like, I don't want to say the government, but you know, if there's higher up what is it, like programs or any means of ways that I can help with that, I'm totally willing to.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it. Are you open for a hug? Appreciate it. There's a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, I was very flattered. I was like, what? Because I've heard of